Welcome to another edition of Locally on the Links. I'm Rich Roth, joined in studio by the director of golf over at London Downs, Marty Chandler. What's going on, Marty? We finally got some warm weather.
It's been a long, cold winter, but we're back.
Is it here to stay?
Yeah, we're officially here. You know, I don't know what the groundhog said where we're at in the whole 6 weeks more, but we got to be close to the end of that too.
We got to be. We're all praying for that.
Yeah, no question.
Oh boy, but yes, nice warm weather, and I know people are itching to get out to the golf course. We're really getting into the heart of it. When it comes to the PGA Tour too, right? Bay Hill, Arnie's tournament, Sawgrass, the Players Championship, the Masters just around the corner. I mean, it feels like we're here.
Yeah, with some sustained warm days with some sunshine, we feel like we definitely turned the corner, and certainly the storylines on the PGA Tour are starting to kind of line up as you head into the first major of the year.
Let's hold off on the PGA Tour talk right now, but let's talk a little bit about the warmer weather. And I know we talked a bunch through the winter of what people can do to kind of stay in shape if they've got the Jones to play golf, and it's putting indoors, it's a lot of stretching, it's a lot of staying in shape, right? I mean, that type of stuff. But now we're getting out there. What should people expect from their golf game if they haven't been out and played in a while?
Well, I think a lot of golfers who haven't been able to kind of scratch the itch outside for the last, let's say, 6 weeks or so. A lot of guys have been playing some screen golf, and sometimes the reality of going from the screen golf to outside, it's a lot different when you've got some wet dormant Bermuda versus on the screen golf. Lies are pretty good, and the guys are like, I played Bethpage Black and shot 78 with my buddies, and they go out and don't break 100 playing from the regular tees because all of a sudden like 3 putts matter and chunking chips matter, and so manage the expectations. We always say don't worry, throw out the I want to be consistent this year. Consistency is I mean, Shane Lowry was not consistent this past weekend, and he was on fire playing great, and then just the wheels fell off coming in. So just go out and enjoy probably being outside the first couple of rounds.
Yeah.
And, being in a short sleeve shirt and some sunshine, that's great. And maybe work on something that's attainable in the first couple of rounds when you go out, and maybe track some stats just to kind of get a baseline for where you're at for being outside.
Yeah, let's dive into that in a little bit more in just a second. But you mentioned screen golf, and I'm assuming you're talking about simulators, right? Because they're all over and they're popping up now here in Lynchburg. What's your take on simulators?
It's to me, it's still a kind of golf adjacent. I mean, you're definitely getting some swings in, but I would say it's probably like comparing, playing horse to playing like 5-on-5 basketball.
Okay.
It's a crossover of some skills, but it's not the same thing.
It's not the real deal.
But certainly it's way better than, having the sticks in the garage for 6 weeks and not touch them at all. But you get some swings in. Guys that use some of the simulators have some scoring games that involve you working on your wedge play or working on, shots that are inside 50 yards. Those are all tremendous and great assets to go into the season with. But, for me, when I play, I always find that with the simulator, no matter how big a space you give me, I still feel like I'm kind of trying to swing it in a phone booth. I just never feel free. And so if it's a 150-yard shot, I'm going to take a club that I can hit 170 yards and hit this little chippy kind of swing. Mm-hmm. It's just how I feel being indoors with the ball, hitting a screen and potentially, kind of coming back at you a little bit. Mm. I've been fit in them when the weather wasn't good for new equipment. I've, played skill games in them before and just done some training and, just played around a golf. I've done all that. Mm. It's still not to me as great as getting outside and playing golf.
Yeah, of course. Of course. It's not quite the same, but like you said, I mean, especially, winter, ice, snow, inclement weather, all that, still an opportunity to have some fun, swing the club.
I've got a friend he's got a simulator set up, and he's been able to really work on just making contact on the center of the face. It sounds strange to say that, but it's a great way for him because he's getting feedback because he's got so much information. It's showing him where his strike is. It's showing him the face to path relationship. It's showing him the path of the club, and so it's giving him information that he can dial in his swing a little bit better. And I think he's going to be a better golfer because of it, but it still doesn't replace getting out and figuring out how to score on the golf course, how to take a 6 and keep it as a 5, and,
Right.
you know, little things like that.
You know, you mentioned something else, and it's been really fun for me doing this show, talking to, guys like yourself and all the, all the golf experts who, know how to, improve people's games. Because you just touched on something that I've just heard over and over and over again. But you talked about working on shots 50 yards out, right? It's the chipping and pitching game that, and I hear it all the time, and it makes so much sense because, even chipping, it's like the same, bottom part of your swing making contact with the ball, in the 50-yard shots that are so important, right? In scoring, right?
For sure.
Rather than bombing away drives and you maybe hit 14 drivers, but those chips and pitches are just so critical.
Well, I always tell, students that are trying to like hit a benchmark number, whether they're trying to break 100, break 90, break 80, we usually start with the basics. Let's say somebody that's trying to break 100 is we're trying to make 5s. Like if we can make 5s, that would be a 90 if you have 18 5s on the scorecard. So when you're out of position on a par 4, we're trying to get the ball back into position inside 100 yards, and we're trying to make sure that we hit the green from that inside 100 yards. Doesn't have to be inside 10 feet or 20 feet. It's on the green, and then hopefully we give ourselves a chance to 2-putt. And
there's your 5.
And so if we can squeak out a 4 on a par 3 somewhere, we got a bonus stroke, so we've got that in our back pocket. But the biggest thing right now for those people that are trying to hit those, like I said, those scoring benchmarks that are big for a golfer's career, keep the ball in play, so don't give away strokes out of bounds and hazards. And when you're inside 100 yards, hit the green. Even if we 3-putt some of those, what we don't want to do is miss to a point where we're struggling now because we missed the green and we're in a bunker, and we're not really good at bunker play. So it takes us 2 to get out of the bunker, and those strokes just start adding up, as opposed to I would rather you hit the green and be 50 feet away putting than to miss the green short and short side yourself in a green side bunker. And now you think you have to hit a perfect shot. Because at that point, when we miss the green from 100 and we're in the bunker, our only job is to get it out of the bunker. It's not about hitting it close or anything. Again, it's about managing those expectations of like, we assume, golf pros, they're 100 yards, they're going to hit it to 8 feet every time. And you can look up the stats and they do not. But we sometimes hold ourselves to this standard of, I play golf regularly from 100 yards. I should hit it inside 25 feet every time. I would say probably you'd be better off just hitting greens, not worrying about how close you are to the hole. And so I used to take, when I coach high school, maybe play a 3 or 4 hole loop, and I'd get in front of the groups and take the flag out. So the kids didn't necessarily know where the hole was, so they were forced to just aim at the middle of the green.
Right.
And the number of times they hit more greens not knowing where the pin was because they didn't try to like hit it at a back left pin.
Is that one of the biggest mistakes you see golfers make, is aiming at the pin?
Probably the club selection is up there, number 1.
Okay.
But then, number 2 is like maybe not necessarily picking out a specific target that is relevant and manageable. Like maybe it's looking at the pin, or instead of, they're looking at the fairway rather than I want to go like, I want you to pick out something like that's the center of the fairway rather than just going, let me just aim it out there.
Right. Because if you miss by a couple yards and you're aiming at the whole fairway, you're in the rough. Whereas if you're aiming at the middle of the fairway, you're on the left side or the right side, and it's no big deal.
And so generally I talk about, what are you aiming at? And then are you actually successfully setting yourself up for that target? So sometimes I go, well, I'm hitting it at that. And then I like lay something down and have them back off. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm not over that. I was like, you're not near it at all. So you could hit a great shot and you're going to think it's a bad shot because it didn't go where you think you were aiming. And so setup and target kind of acquisition is a skill that's super important for beginners rather than just stepping up. And that's why sometimes on the range, with high school golfers and young golfers, we always talk about they kind of just drag and hit. So they dump the bucket of balls over, they drag a ball over and they hit it. And then they drag another one in front of them and hit it. And they never, unless they're just trying to, build muscles, burn steam. I don't know, that's really not what golf is. Golf requires you to hit completely different clubs and or shots in consecutive fashion. So I hit a drive and then an iron and then maybe a pitch shot and then a putt, all of which are kind of different skill sets, all within the umbrella of playing golf.
Because it makes you feel like you're actually playing around rather than just going through the motions and just hitting, hitting balls.
There's nobody ever that's hit 10 7-irons in a row playing a round of golf. But we will hit 10 7, 15, 20 7-irons in a row when we're practicing. Now, like I said, if you're block practice and you're trying to work on a specific thing, I get that. But in many cases for beginners, they need to take that time to make sure they're lined up every single shot. So it's taking the patience of, I'm going to hit a driver with a specific target, and then I'm going to hit an 8-iron to a specific target. So try to play maybe a golf hole within your practice rather than just hit a bunch of drivers and a bunch of 8-irons.
How do you teach lining up a shot?
My technique has always been, I find a target that is very, very close to the ball and where I'm set up. So
a foot, 2 feet?
So yeah, I'll look at no more than 2 feet out in front. So I'm going to get behind on my target line something up that's, whether it's a piece of a leaf, a broken tee, something that's very, very easy for me to set up to and go, if I hit it over this and I hit it relatively straight, I'm going to be at my very specific target that might be 150 or 180 yards away. Tends to work, but a lot of times people, because of their eye dominance and their shoulder line, they get down there and they start fidgeting and moving. And next thing you know, because they're trying to line up and they lift up and look out of posture rather than staying in posture and down the line, and they kind of contort themselves to, typically left of where they think they are.
And that's such a big key, right? Because, and obviously we're doing a radio show, so people didn't see you kind of lifting your head up to look down. But if you're trying to line it up looking 200, 250 yards down the fairway at that, that stake in the middle of the fairway or that tree that you're aiming at or whatever, you could be changing your whole body position. Whereas if you get behind the ball, pick out your target, draw that line back to the ball, and then you've got, like you said, a leaf or a tee or something that's a foot in front of the ball. When you're lining up over the ball, you just have to kind of glance over a little bit.
Correct.
at that target you picked out.
And that target that's so close to where I'm set up, I'm staying in posture the whole time, as opposed to again, radio medium, sorry, people can't see what I'm doing here. But, when you kind of lift up out of your posture, turn and rotate your head, you're now no longer kind of oriented where your, feet and knees and hips and everything should kind of lock in. You start breaking all that down. And the next thing you know, my feet are pointed one way and my shoulders are pointed another because I've broken that chain up. As opposed to once I get into posture, I might just kind of glance and make sure that my club face is matched up with that piece of tee or leaf, whatever that I'm set up over. And then certainly a second set of eyes for somebody that might be standing behind you that makes sure, hey, the club face is where we want it, but now let's make sure. So I might come in and adjust shoulders a little bit and go, and just tip one shoulder one way and get them going, and then they go, wow, that feels off. And then I go, it's not, and then we can maybe take some video. And then usually that helps a whole lot because the old big eye in the sky don't lie. If you have video and can show them and kind of trace and show them where they're lined up, then it starts to connect of like what I'm feeling is wrong. So I have to get past my feeling because the feelings are steering me down the wrong path.
It reminds me of, you hit that ball and you hit it straight and you're like, man, why is it over there? And your partner or your buddy goes, man, you hit it where you lined up. And you're going, just all ticked off. Like, why am I lining up the wrong way? And it could be just as simple as picking out that little target a foot in front of the ball and making sure that that's all you need to do.
You also see it with like a super high handicap that's like hits a big slice, just a huge slice. And how many times does he aim left? Because he's trying to compensate. The ball's going to come back. And then they all of a sudden hit one and it goes right into the left trees. And like, oh, I didn't slice that time. And it's like, that does give you feedback of when the face is pointed at where the shoulders are, like you will hit it in that direction. And so, a double cross, I'm aimed one direction and I hit it the other. We understand how alignment does factor in. It's very important to the game, but we sometimes don't practice it. We don't build that foundational principle like, hey, I got to make sure I'm set up square before I try to move this club around my body.
Got another minute or two before we take a break. And we're talking with Marty Chandler here from London Downs Golf Club. Open, beautiful weather, get out there and play. But we're talking a little bit about dormant Bermuda. We see a lot of that around here this time of year. How does that affect play? Because sometimes it can be kind of a tight lie. I know I've been in situations where the Bermuda's dormant and I'm aiming for the rough because I'd rather have a little bit of fluffiness. But you were talking about chipping and pitching too.
Yeah, a lot of times when you're running, coming out of winter, early spring, when you still have dormant Bermuda in some areas, especially low lying around greens where it gets really soft. And we've all experienced that where we catch it a little bit heavy. We catch ground first, the club digs in, and the divot goes 3 feet and the ball goes 6 inches. And so I always tell people it's better to have maybe a go-to shot in those circumstances that is a little bit more insurance on catching ball first. So I always encourage people to get a little closer to the golf ball and move the golf ball further back in the stance on those shots that are around the green, maybe inside 10, 15 yards.
Do you use a different club?
I tend to use my sand wedge a lot, a 56-degree wedge, unless I specifically need a ton of loft. But in this case, what I'm just trying to do by having that ball position back and keeping the handle forward, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm hitting down and I'm catching ball first. And so all those setup things are trying to kind of tip the scales to my advantage by having ball back and handle forward.
So while it may not go exactly perfectly like you would ideally want it to, you're not going to hit it. You're not going to hit the divot further than the ball in a situation.
Yeah,
like
we're
that.
just trying to avoid that big flub that and now we have the same shot again, and also now the pressure of like, all right, I just skunked one, so now I got to do it again,
and then you blade it.
Yeah. Sounds like you've played golf before, Rich. Yeah, it always seems to work that way. So I'm playing that more of a conservative shot to go, hey, I'm going to try to get it on the green. I'm going to plan for this to run out a little bit more. I'm not necessarily worried about hitting anything super high. And so I always try to get people to keep the ball on the ground as much as they can. And in this case, we're only just bypassing some fringe because certainly most courses we have not filled in this region. So it can be a little spotty. You might have a tuft of grass here. It might be some smooth grass here. It might be a little bit worn where we're waiting for the spring to have a little bit of grass fill in there. So it's a shot to where I can kind of carry it a little bit and then just going to let it just run out from there.
What I'm hearing from you over and over today is just get it on the green.
1,000%. Yeah.
Just get it on the green and go from there.
The key to chipping is just chip once. Everything else is bonus.
Marty Chandler joining me, London Downs, Director of Golf here on Locally on the Links. We're going to take a quick break, talk a little bit about the spring out at London Downs and all the great tour events that are coming up, including the Masters. Stay tuned. Rolling along here on Locally on the Links, I'm with Marty Chandler of London Downs Golf Club. He's the director of golf out there. And Marty, spring is here, and I know you guys have a lot planned for London Downs out here in 2026. Let's talk a little bit about what folks have to look forward to in the next few weeks specifically. As we'll have a chance to talk quite a bit about other things as well. But, golf course, it'll be a little bit before it greens up, right? Because that Bermuda, you need some really consistent days in the 70s and 80s to really get that greened up, right?
Yeah, the biggest thing for the Bermuda is overnight temps because the ground, when you have overnight lows that are in the upper 30s and low 40s, that's what kind of keeps that Bermuda dormant. So once the ground temperatures start coming up, for us, because we don't overseed, we tend to see it green up a little bit earlier than maybe some of the other courses that have Bermuda that do some overseed. Since there's no competition for the food source in the ground, the Bermuda, once it gets warm, it just kind of takes off. You'll typically see it go in stages of color change. The color change is the initial part. That's when everybody thinks it's growing, but that's just coming out of dormancy. Then the next stage is actual growth, where you see the need to actually mow, and then when you start mowing, then things take off because then you're off and running. And
you wanted to give folks a little bit of a heads up about punching the greens or aerifying, right? Because you're going to do that earlier this year.
Yeah, we typically wait till later in March, but with a warm spell coming around and sustained warm temperatures through the night, we're hoping to get it done earlier this year, simply because coming off that harsh winter, we're going to take advantage of the warm temperatures and try to get things going as quick as possible. So hopefully that means we'll have a little bit better conditions into late March and early April, rather than waiting to aerify on that pocket.
What new what, if anything, new are folks going to see at London Downs this year?
We've done a couple little small projects. We cleaned out some trees mainly is one thing. Some people will notice that there's some less trees in some areas that we're seeing some older ones that needed to get removed.
People
Some
always like to see that. Don't they?
the funny part is, when you see that little orange band around a tree, it's going to be, going to be gone at some point in time. And so I have to be careful because some people, I think, might go to the hardware store and just start buying, orange ribbon and just putting it on trees that are causing them problems rather than ones that are actually dying. So we're going to eventually do some work. We've had to postpone the retaining wall that's around our 8th green. We've been talking about doing some work with it, but the winter really gave us no opportunity to get down there and do anything with it. Typically, we can get some projects done in December and January like that, where play is a little bit lower, and we can maybe turn it into a par 3 hole or something. That way, our staff can still be down there working while there's golfers out. But basically, 3 weeks of the place being shut down, we're just happy to be open and have some golfers out there right now.
For tee times, you recommend people jump online rather than call the shop?
Either or, online, you can do it, 7 days in advance. If you don't see anything, you might give us a call. There might be a group that's only doing 9 holes that we might be able to offer their turn time to play the back 9. In most cases, we've got our schedule posted as far as events. If you're looking to see if you have if you have people that want to play in a Captain's Choice tournament, there might be something that's on our calendar. You might inquire if they're still accepting registrations. We can point you in the right direction for those as well.
525 Golf is
525 Golf, yeah, and London Downs Golf at Gmail if you want to reach out that way as well.
Big few weeks coming up on the PGA Tour. I know a lot of folks' golf season really kind of starts when the Masters kicks off, but we've got obviously right in the middle of Arnie's tournament, Bay Hill, and the Players Championship is such a great golf tournament down at Sawgrass. So we've got those going on.
Yeah, you're going to see an example of pure overseed. It's going to be so green and so vibrant. So between the Players and then the Masters, people kind of get some sensory overload as far as what a golf course can be when it's primed and it's a 10 out of 10, which I wish we had some of the budgets that they're working with. Certainly, you got, a crew of, who knows, like 200 superintendents that flock to, TPC Sawgrass to help out just to prep and stage it, on top of, we've got, 3 full-time guys and some, retirees that are mowing, we do what we can with what we have, but certainly when you're going to see those, you get fired up for what's coming down the pike for us as far as weather and green grass.
What are you expecting to see? Guys who are playing well. Obviously, we've seen a couple guys make the switch from the Live Tour back to the PGA Tour, and with these tournaments coming up, what are you keeping an eye on? Who are you keeping an eye on? I know people are probably thinking Rory and of course Scotty Scheffler, right?
Scotty's had quote unquote rough start to the last few tournaments because of either a Thursday or Friday rounds kind of kept him at or near the bottom, and then he just kind of the cream rises and he ends up somewhere in the mix by the time Sunday rolls around. But all that being said, he still has a win on the year. He's still the best player. He's still hitting great shots. He's just having one round, which tells you how fine of a line it is to get a win out there when he is known as the best player. He, carries that with him, and people kind of keep track of where he is on the leaderboard. But even for him, if he has one round where it maybe falls below his standard, it keeps him from, out of the winner's circle. But it also tells you if he can take a mediocre round and keep it in the 60s, he's got 65s and 64s, in his, toolbox, so to speak. When he goes out there and plays, he's got shots and he's got the scoring ability that other people don't possess right now.
Final 30 seconds or so. Give us an update on Zach Bauchou, and do you think we'll see Tiger at Augusta?
Zach right now I think is around the 70th in the FedEx. He's 5 for 5 cuts made. He's got 2 top 25s. Young man that grew up here in Lynchburg. He is playing and finishing up Puerto Rico this week. He was in the opposite field, and then he's on the alternate list, I think as high as second on the alternate list, so has a really good chance to actually play at TPC Sawgrass here in a couple weeks. Yes, I think Tiger's going to play in the Masters.
That'll be exciting. I don't know what to expect from him, but it's always good to see him back.
Yeah, it's always a heartbreaker when he doesn't do what he used to do, but I'm of that age, so I'm hoping we see him there and play well.
Marty, a pleasure as always. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate the time.
Marty Chandler, London Downs.